my positive no epidural natural birth story with you guys and sharing some of my birth vlog. If you guys are new here, my name is Sage. I'm a mom of 3. I have a teenager, a toddler, and now I have a newborn, and they're all boys, and I do have one cat that is a girl. I want to start this video off by saying this is my second time giving birth. If you're confused, my oldest is adopted, and this is my second natural birth. I hope you guys can take something away from this because I am going to share all the things I used to have a really positive birth this time and any tips and tricks I have for relieving pain in labor. When I was pregnant with my first, my birth was really hard and really long, and I wanted to tell you guys how I made it more positive this time. So when I gave birth the first time, I was in labor for 27 hours. I had a premature water leak, which meant there was a hole in my amniotic fluid sac. Because my water had grown broken for over 48 hours, I had to get induced. So being on Pitocin and having a natural birth was the worst thing ever. I know some people love to be induced, but if you're trying to have a natural birth, I recommend avoiding just because you might be in labor longer and you're going to be at the hospital longer. I do have a little bit of sad news for this video. I had taken my camera with me to the hospital and filmed my birth, and just a lot of footage I would love to have, and I'm so sad that I don't have. But when I got home, I cannot get my camera to charge. It's at a shop right now, and hopefully they can fix it or at least get me the videos off there. But I will be sharing that hopefully later if I can still get that footage. But luckily my husband had filmed a lot on his iPhone too, so I'm going to share those videos in here. So I was way past my due date. I was 41 weeks and 1 day. It was Friday and I had an induction scheduled on Monday. In my head, I had given up on trying to go into labor because I was trying everything. I just accepted that I was going to be induced on Monday. So my husband, as a little hobby, works on dirt bikes. So he'll buy used dirt bikes and he'll fix them. He always buys them off Facebook Marketplace. On the night of the 18th, he found one that I wanted to go pick up. Because I had convinced myself I wasn't going to give birth, I just was like, oh, you can definitely go pick it up. I definitely don't think I'm going to have the baby till Monday. And it was kind of far away, like an hour away. Morning of the 19th at 1 a.m., he wasn't home yet, and I said, hey, I'm having some really mild cramping. I think you need to make sure you get home soon. So he came home. I had like cramps that felt like period cramps, but not anything that felt like a contraction, like maybe a Braxton Hicks, but I definitely didn't think I was in labor. I went to sleep. I woke up at 5 a.m. and I was definitely having some stronger cramping, but definitely still not thinking, oh, this is real labor. So I got in the shower. I was in the shower for like an hour. I was like, I don't really feel like everything's progressing, but I am having these like every 20 minutes probably. So that's a little scary to me. And then at 6 a.m., I woke my husband up and I was like, hey, I think I might be in early labor. Like, I'm definitely having some kind of contractions because they're consistent, but they're not very strong. So he woke up with our toddler, and I decided to clean my kitchen. I cleaned our kitchen, I mopped, I swept. I literally was doing extensive deep cleaning and just stopping for a little break every time I felt like I had a contraction. Around 7 a.m., I called my mom and I was like, hey, actually my contractions are definitely real contractions and I'm having them probably every 10 minutes and they're lasting 20 to 30 seconds, so you need to come get our toddler. At this point, our teenager was already at school. My mom has had 6 kids and she was like, okay, just wait like an hour or two, maybe call me around 9 and I'll come get him. My contractions really started picking up, and I remember hearing that if your contractions feel like you actually have to stop what you're doing or you can't laugh through them anymore or you're getting loud, like you're physically making noise because you're in pain, you need to go to the hospital. Our hospital is 40 minutes away, and the roads were flooded the week before, so we needed to at least have an hour to get to the hospital. So I called my mom again at 8:30 and I was like, you need to come get our toddler. I am definitely in labor. At this point, I felt like my contractions were strong and they definitely hurt a little bit, but I didn't feel like they were unbearable. Like I could definitely still talk and I was still cleaning until my mom got there. At 9 o'clock, my mom got there. At 9 o'clock, my mom came over and we packed up my toddler in her car. We packed up all our stuff in our car. I finished cleaning the house. I put whatever food I had in the freezer. And we decided it was probably time to leave for the hospital. So I think at 10 o'clock, we left the house. And we had to stop and get gas. And it took us an hour and a half to get to the hospital because of previous road flooding. When I was on the way to the hospital, my contractions started to get really, really strong. When I tell you guys there was something that made a huge difference in being able to bear those contractions in the car, I'm going to give you guys this tip because I wish I had done this last time because it literally was so helpful. But before I had done this, my contractions felt literally unbearable in the car. I have a pair of like soundproof headphones and I put those on and I put on my playlist of birth affirmations. I can share that with you guys, but you can also look up Built to Birth on YouTube because that's where I get them from, and she has like a huge list of birth affirmations. And I put those on, and when I tell you my contractions literally became bearable because I felt like empowered by these birth affirmations, they were literally bearable. It took us an hour and a half to get to the hospital. We got to the hospital at 11:30. They told us they had one room available. This is a really small hospital we go to. That's why we love it. But they literally had more moms in there, they said, than they ever have. And they said they only had one room available and they didn't even have a labor and delivery bed in the room. I wait a while for them to bring us one. When I tell you guys, I had brought labor and delivery nurse goodie bags. I had brought a birth plan to put up. I had brought fairy lights. I wanted to set up my speaker. I didn't get to do any of these things because how quick my labor was. And something I told myself I was going to do differently this time I gave birth was move around as much as possible. So this time on my birth plan, and I am going to share that with you guys, I put that I didn't want to get an IV because last time I had to be on Pitocin, and being on Pitocin, you know, you're hooked up to an IV, so you can't move a ton. So I didn't even want IV fluids because I wanted to be able to move. So I just got a hep lock in my arm so they could do an IV later if they needed to or if something went wrong. I wanted a monitor that you could move around with because they do have Bluetooth ones, but they didn't have any available because there were so many moms there. So I did have to be hooked up to the monitor for a while. I got a birth ball and I just sat on the birth ball and leaned over the bed. I put on my birth affirmations and my husband did back compressions, and this was the biggest changer for me in this labor compared to my last because I didn't do that last time. And every time I had a contraction, my husband did back compressions on me, and when I tell you, I literally felt like I could bear the contractions. It was so much better. One of my biggest tips if you're trying to do a natural birth is definitely have a birth partner you're comfortable with, someone who's definitely going to get up and be active in the labor and help you. And if possible, take a doula class with them because the doula will tell them what they can do to help you. I was extremely nauseous this labor. I don't know why. I guess maybe just from the pain. But I was throwing up every time I had a contraction. So my nurse came in and told me the baby was not liking the position I was in at all and was making his heart rate drop. I got on the bed and did a hands and knees position for the rest of my labor. At this point, I had only been there 2.5 hours, which is not that long compared to my last labor. I pressed the nurse's button and I was like, someone needs to come in. I feel the urge to push. And they said, okay, someone will be in right away. It had been like maybe 5 minutes and I got nervous and I pressed it again. I was like, I'm not joking, like someone needs to come in right now, like I'm about to have the baby. So they came in, they set up a table. They were like, oh yeah, you're definitely ready. I stayed in the hands and knees position to push because I didn't want to tear, and I read that really helps. After I pushed a couple times, he got something called shoulder dystocia, which means only one shoulder comes out. And that can be really dangerous because it can cut their nerves right here and actually cause them to have paralyzed arms. So she got really nervous and she told me I needed to flip over onto my back. So I did that and she had to pull him out, and that was extremely painful, and I was really scared I was gonna tear because I am terrified of needles. So I was more scared to get stitches than anything else. I flipped over and he was fine. She got him out and I only pushed for 14 minutes, and I'm shocked because it felt way longer than that because last time I pushed for an hour and pushing felt so much easier than contractions, but this time it was the opposite. Contractions felt easier than pushing. At 2:34, baby Luca was born. I absolutely love my midwife, and it's part of the reason I go to the smaller hospital. And last time I gave birth and this time, they're really good about following what you want to do if you're having a natural birth or you have special requests. So I always request that they put them right on your chest after birth, but because that shoulder dystocia thing happened, they did take him to the heated bed thing because they just wanted to make sure his arms were okay. And they had my husband cut the cord over there, just I think because he was already over there. And then they came and put him on my chest. Then I had to birth the placenta, which if you haven't given birth before and you're going too soon, just know after you give birth, you also have to birth your placenta. It doesn't really hurt because it's like big, but it's squishy. So they just kind of let that happen on its own. It takes a couple minutes after. It's not even like immediately after. Like honestly, I think it took at least 10 to 15 minutes after I gave birth for that to happen. They said I had no tearing, which I was so happy about. And then they let us have our golden hour, which is just like no nurses. They don't do any checks or anything yet, and they wait to do any vaccines or anything like that afterwards. But that's my positive birth story. I actually loved my birth this time. It was so quick. It felt so much easier than my first. And I know everyone has a different birth experience. So I don't want to just be like, oh, I had this great birth experience, but I don't think you hear positive birth stories a lot, especially about natural births. So I do want to share just so other people aren't scared of birth or know that birth can be really good. And after having this birth, my biggest takeaways for pain or pain relief without the epidural is number one, birth affirmations. Look up Built to Birth on YouTube. You can watch her your entire pregnancy. She has tons of tips on natural birth, not getting the epidural, or even if you're getting it, she has tons of just tips about birth in general. Number two would be having a really good birth partner or somebody you can trust, or even there was a nurse there that Luke ran down to get food one time because he hadn't eaten that morning. And when he did that, she was doing the back compressions for me, and she was so sweet, and I loved her so much. And I just like, she was the baby's nurse after that, and I just, I loved her. Number three would definitely be the back compressions. Four is moving around as much as possible. This was extremely hard for me, and I could not do it my first birth, but this time I forced myself to do it. My labor went by so quick, I think, because of it. It's my birth experience from this time. I hope it has some good takeaways. If you guys want to see more videos like this, you can follow me on here. I also post a lot more on TikTok, and I share a lot of our daily stuff on Instagram, on my Instagram story. But if you want to see more YouTube videos like this, let me know because I want to start doing weekly YouTube videos. Thank you so much for watching. I hope this encouraged you to have a good experience in your birth and enjoy it. I hope this was a positive birth story for you because I know I would listen to some birth stories and they just would scare me. And so I hope this didn't do that for anybody else. That's all for today's video, guys. Love you.